Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 2021 Delaware River Festival. We are so excited that you are joining us this morning for one of our Delaware River Festival career panels featuring environmental professionals working right here in the Philadelphia and Camden areas. My name is Chessa Ramachadi, and I will be moderating today's panel. I work at the Partnership for the Delaware Estuary, which is a nonprofit leading science-based and collaborative efforts to improve the tidal Delaware River and Bay. I want to start out this morning by just thanking some of the planning partners involved in the Delaware River Festival, including the Center for Aquatic Sciences, the Philadelphia Water Department, the Independent Seaport Museum, Camden County Parks, and so many other partners that have really helped us with the festival this year. Today, we have a great program for you. We'll be hearing from some environmental professionals about their experience working in the field. We're going to start out with each of our amazing panelists giving a brief overview of their current position and career path, and then we'll jump into our question and answer period. So you'll have an opportunity to ask all of your questions of our panelists. You can type them into the chat whenever they come to you. On whatever platform you're using, we'll see those questions come in and we'll get to those later in the program. So first up, we have Bria. So take it away, Bria.
Yay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thanks again to PDE for inviting me to this career panel. Really excited for any questions that come out from it. I have a PowerPoint, so I'm going to share my screen really quickly. All right. Okay. Can everyone see the screen? Hopefully. All right, so before I start with talking about myself, I want to talk a little bit about my job. I work for the Audubon Society, and it's a nonprofit environmental organization, and it mainly focuses on birds, bird conservation, conservation relating to birds, like native plants, healthy waters, healthy trees, etc. It was founded back in 1905 by John James Audubon, and it's a nationwide organization. So there's different centers and conservation projects throughout the states. Now, specifically in Audubon, I work for the Discovery Center, and that was founded back in 2018. It's located in North Philly. For those who are nearby, definitely check it out. It's free, and we're open Tuesday through Sunday. What's really unique about this site is that there's a 37-acre reservoir on the site. And before, it was used for drinking water, but since that decommissioned, now it's just a conservation area for the fish that live in there, migratory birds, and other different animals. So Discovery, even though we're about education, outreach, conservation, we also like to focus on the local community. So we have different programs that like to tap in different internships, fellowships. So it's really great to work with science, but also work with people as well. Okay, so now that's over with. My name is Bria. I'm the environmental educator for Audubon, specifically the Mid-Atlantic region. I was born and raised in Philly, and I have a BS in marine biology from Florida International University. So my main focus, or I would say my passion, really love aquatic education, restoration, conservation, anything in the water. That's what I love to do. But I'm also focused on that environmental justice as well, and working with people too in the history of Philadelphia. So my pathway of getting here, after college, I started working at Fairmont Waterworks, which we have someone here who I'm sure will talk more about it. That's where I started my education consulting. Also work with Let's Go Outdoors. So teaching, on site and off site, doing hands-on learning kind of thing, and also attended an environmental leadership program, which was really great to tie in that people and science together. So these are just some pictures that I have scattered about. Now, my duties for my position, even though my title is environmental education, I feel like we do a lot more in nonprofit. So I mainly create and teach lessons K through 12. Since we're still in COVID and the pandemic, so a lot of things were shift to online. So we had a virtual summer camp at one point. We have field trips that come into Discovery Center, and we do some online lessons too. I also coordinate a mussel nursery activities. So our reservoir here is home to about 800 freshwater mussels. And this is a project that's actually connected with all of the participants here on the panel. So, but for this site, I mainly coordinate the volunteers that come in and measure the mussels. Also lead mussel surveys, and on the people side, I coordinate some public outreach programs. We have been starting a lot of LGBTQ programs, which is great. Since I'm a queer woman, it's really great to see more of that community here. So we have some pride events, queer bird walks, and besides that, bird feeder workshops, anything related to birds is what we like to do. Also have assisted in citywide conservation projects like Lights Out Philly and the Whippy Meadow Conservation. So just to show some more pictures of what I do, that was our virtual summer camp. It's very interesting having, third graders on Zoom trying to keep their focus, but they all did really great. It's a picture of the reservoir and me teaching on our dock. And here's just another picture of our Pride event that we had, which was a lot of fun. We hosted a sunset bird walk, and we're actually planning something for Outfest too. So really looking forward to that as well. Okay, and that's my spiel. I'm hoping I'm under the time limit.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Bria. Next up, we are going to hear from David Keller. So go ahead, David.
That was great, Bria. I wish I had a nice PowerPoint like you do. But I guess folks are going to have to look at the shelves behind me in my office that I'm crammed into right now. I am I'm head of the fisheries department here at the Academy of Natural Sciences in Philadelphia. This is a museum in Center City. So we do educational programming. We have exhibits that most of the public can come and see. We maintain collections that are used by scientists to conduct research, and that's kind of the space that I start to come into. I don't work too much with the collections, but I work with, we do use the collections at times. A lot of my work that I do currently is geared towards solving problems that deal with fish, if I had to put it as simply as that. So a lot of people care about fish, whether it's fishing or it's eating the fish or using fish as indicators of water quality or ecosystem health. And so that's a lot of what I do, and that's a lot of the folks that I work with and what we do. So I'm responsible in my current position for seeking new projects and trying to work with partners in the region to solve problems that deal with fish. And a lot of folks, they may come to us with a problem and say, hey, Dave, hey, Academy, how can we work together to solve this problem or to come up with figure out what we should do next. And so that's generally what it is I work on. To be a fisheries biologist, my career path for me, and I think for most folks in fisheries science, starts somewhere around late high school, college. that's where my interest kind of started to show up in terms of being interested in working with fisheries science. In this particular field, most of your first positions are temporary positions, seasonal or summer positions. We hire a lot of staff like that now at the academy that come in and will work with us for 6 months to a year, and then they're trying to move on to another position with another group, either groups like New Jersey Fish and Wildlife or the Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission, or state and government agencies. So to do that, you normally need a degree, a college degree in something like ecology or biology, or environmental science. Often there's a graduate level degree is typically starting to become more common, more required to advance your career in fisheries science. And so I have a PhD, but I also at some point got a master's degree. And that's kind of part of the process. I'd say in your early 20s, if this is a career of interest to you, you'd be gaining experience in temporary and kind of seasonal positions and going to school to try and get that master's degree. And then you'd have to make a choice. Would the master's degree be enough for you in those kind of positions, or would you want to pursue a PhD and maybe do more more analytical work? You start analyzing the data a little more, do a little more writing, and you kind of get out of the field, so to speak. That's kind of the career, my experience. That's kind of what my experience has been. One last thing I'll mention is how I actually decided I wanted to do this for a living. I actually started out in college, or when I went to college my freshman year, thinking that I would do physical therapy. I was an athlete. I loved sports. I loved exercise. Thought I would do physical therapy. My summer after my freshman year, I tore my knee and I needed to go. And after I got it fixed, I needed to go get physical therapy. So I got to see what a physical therapist did. And I said, you know what? I don't want to do that. And it was at that point I had to decide, what am I going to do with my biology degree? And I realized I also loved fish, and I had a lot of interest in that from growing up fishing with my family and grandparents and so forth. And so I decided to pursue a career in the environmental field. Key point there is both for whether it's physical therapy or if it's environmental science, I would encourage everyone to intern and volunteer and really try and see what that position is like. Shadow if you can. Get a little taste of what the field is that you're interested in going into. And I think that would really help you decide if this is something you want to do. That's what I have for now, but I'll be happy to take questions when we get to that part of the program.
Great. Thank you so much. I think that's really great advice for our students to hear. So next up, we'll hear from Ellen Schultz. Take it away, Ellen.
Thank you, Chessa, and thank you all panelists. Thank you to the Partnership for the Delaware Estuary and all of you students who are here today to listen to some of us talk about our careers. So again, my name is Ellen Schultz. Currently, I'm the Director of Education Partnerships for the Fairmount Waterworks. The Fairmount Waterworks is the watershed education center for the Philadelphia Water Department. There's a lot of water in everything I just said, and that's the key to my job and all of our lives too. There's water in everything. So I'm pretty excited about what I get to do every day. I've been with the Fairmount Waterworks in various positions, and that's part of what I would say to all of you is things can change in a position, but I've been with them almost 16 years. So I've seen things change over time and my responsibilities change and grow along with the programs that I've been able to develop. I do want to share my screen, but I want to say before I share my screen, full disclosure, I'm not a scientist. I don't even play one on Zoom or anything else. My love and background is in history, and I have an undergraduate degree in history and a graduate degree in something called historic preservation, which is related to architecture and the built environment, not the natural environment. So I think that that actually attracted me to the Fairmount Waterworks to begin with as a historic landmark building in Philadelphia. But also, I think it brings a broad view to the education work that I do. So I hope I try and connect all the disciplines, if you want to call it that, all the subject areas that are in school and my work. So I think that education is not just about one area or another. And I would encourage you, as you go through your high school years and thinking about your careers yourself, that you keep that broad view of the world. So let me just share. Let me see if I can do this. I don't know if I know how. Okay, here we go. Do you see this? I don't know if you can see the picture. Someone tell me. Unable to share screen. Okay. Well, I'm just going to use my words then to describe. But what I was going to show you is a historic view of the Fairmount Waterworks, because our buildings were provided drinking water to the city of Philadelphia. We were a pump house, and we were a beautiful pump house. So the architecture is as significant as the function of what that building did in historically. And today, if you drive down the 76 or you walk in the park, Fairmount Park, we are right below the art museum, right at the river's edge, because that was our function. So today I work mostly with the School District of Philadelphia in writing, and I work a lot with teachers. We write curriculum, we implement curriculum, and what's really the most exciting part of my job is that I want the things that you're learning every day in school to be fun, engaging, meaningful, and relatable. So we've written a curriculum that we think is really local. It's all about what's right outside the school door, school window, in your homes. And water is one of those great connectors for everything that you're learning. As I said, my background was in built environment education, and I did a lot of work in a program called Architecture and Education, which was essentially the same kind of thing, bringing the world around us, the buildings and the landscape, into our lives and what it means to us. So when I talk about what my favorite part of my job is, I would just answer that by saying everything. I love what I do. I love the work I do. I love working with students, and I am so excited to be able to go back into schools. I love visiting the schools that we work with and seeing students really excited about looking at maps or looking at their schoolyard or looking at, on a rainy day, how water behaves. So what I'd say about careers, I've had a long career and hard to explain to most people because it's meandered, just like the stream. My career has gone through many changes. I would just say, in terms of career paths, start with what you're passionate about, what you love. And then if you start with what you love or what you're interested in, Bria mentioned, and David, have some practice, go look for internship opportunities to really see if what you think you're passionate about, you really are passionate about. And the best way to do that is to get internships while you're in high school. Ask your teachers, ask people in your school, ask people in jobs, just, send them an email. I'm interested in this. Do you know of any opportunities? And that is really, for me, my advice is the best way to start out. And then, and also have some idea when you enter high school, what you are interested in studying. And sometimes what you're interested in studying, and then a certain class just grabs you, and it's not at all what you set out to be interested in, but it really grabs you. Go with it. Don't hold back. This is your opportunity while you're in school to try things out and explore. So just keep your mind open, and things will fall into place. So that's what I'll say. I'll wait for questions later. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ellen. Last up, we have actually one of my colleagues at the Partnership for the Delaware Estuary, Kurt. So go ahead, Kurt.
All right. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Thanks for having me. And I guess I'll try and be brief, but my name is Kurt Chang. I'm the Shellfish Coordinator for the Partnership for the Delaware Estuary. And I've been at PDE, as we like to shorten our name, for about 10 years. And so, yeah, my main job is to be a scientist and to try and understand and further our research on freshwater mussels, things like clams or oysters, anything that is generally a shellfish we're interested in. And the primary reason is because they filter water. So, when it comes down to it, like Ellen mentioned, water is a theme that tends to recur in a lot of our jobs. And that's, why we care. So a little bit about me. I grew up in central New Jersey, and I kind of lived by the coast enough to, know that fish are kind of cool, and I like crayfish. And so I grew up, going to the beach every now and then, and fishing was really fun to me. And so when I started to think about, going to high school and then thinking about jobs and possibly either going to college or, what do I want to do? What am I interested in? I didn't really have a good understanding of what kind of jobs were out there, but I did know I liked water, and particularly I liked the beach, and I liked the ocean, and I liked fish. I like catching them. I like eating them. I like reading about them. All your movies and everything. Anything that had like an underwater scene was just cool to me. So I decided, okay, I'll go to Rutgers, and pursued marine biology. And every course that I took that had anything with a fish was really interesting to me. And I worked all throughout college, and it was basically just my focus was I know generally this is what I want. And then as the years passed, I started to refine and really, like David said, you might go down one path. I might not like fish that much. And so for me, I ended up going towards shellfish, which aren't quite the same, but they're similar. And there was an opportunity that opened up at a shellfish lab, at an oyster lab. So I took it, and I didn't really know much about it, but I, spent 2 summers in the middle of nowhere just researching oysters. And it was really cool. I got to do all kinds of different activities. I got to research their biology, their ecology. I got to go out on different boats and study different types of shellfish. And then, fast forward to I got an internship at PDE, and then got exposed to all kinds of different projects at PDE. I worked in wetlands, both in freshwater and saltwater. And then eventually went back to school, worked all throughout that as well, and got my master's. And now I basically lead a lot of our shellfish programs all throughout, Southeast Pennsylvania, in Philly, in Wilmington, and it's been really fun. So I think I would like to echo what everyone else said in terms of, what worked for me was just keep trying. And you don't know what you don't know. There were some opportunities that just didn't end up happening, and that just leaves you more time to do something else. So I'd say I tried to stay as busy as possible, and if you keep trying, you're going to end up somewhere you like.
Great. Thank you, Kurt. And thank you to all of our panelists for those great introductions. I want to remind our audience to type in your questions into our chat, and we will get to those as they come in. I want to start out with a question for our panelists, since this is the Delaware River Festival. If you all could maybe speak to somehow how your job is related or impacts the Delaware River in any way, whether that's, the ecology of the river or the social aspects around the river. What's something that sort of connects you and your job to the Delaware River?
I'll break the ice. So for my job, like I just mentioned, freshwater mussels are bivalves. They're shellfish. We don't eat them, but they live all throughout fresh waters. And honestly, I did not know about them until I came to this job. They were right beneath us, next to our cities. And so everything that we research is just beneath us. And so, a lot of times I've worked with Bria and Ellen at the Fairmount Waterworks before, and translating the science and getting people to acknowledge and understand what natural resources might be next to us in the Delaware River is a pretty satisfying and unique experience.
Go ahead, Ellen.
Well, so many things relate to the river, but in my job. But one thing I mentioned is that the Fairmount Waterworks is part of the Philadelphia Water Department, and the Philadelphia Water Department supplies all the people living in Philadelphia with their drinking water. And that drinking water comes directly from both the Delaware River and the Schuylkill River. The Schuylkill River is a tributary of the Delaware River. So in so many ways, your tap water every day is related to the health of those waterways. So that's just one of many ways. I'm also through my job, part of something called the Alliance for Watershed Education, which is a group of 23 centers throughout the watershed, and they have great internships and fellowships, by the way. So we'll put that in your mind. But we are a way to connect all of our programming to all of the work that we do throughout the watershed, which is all the waterways and streams that feed into the Delaware River as the main stem of the watershed.
I can go next. So for the Delaware River watershed, our center is actually a little bit closer to the Schuylkill River. So we're usually talking about that more. But in terms of education, we always have to talk about the Delaware River. It provides water for millions of people. And depending on if we have a field trip coming in and the kids are coming from different places, then we'll focus on one river versus another river. And then just for Audubon in general, very big on bird habitat conservation. So there are a lot of shorebirds that are on the Delaware River. And there's a lot of people in Audubon who are either working in the field, protecting those nesting sites, or working politically, talking to different politicians, making sure that these birds are okay. Yeah, so I think those are the two main points for Audubon.
I think for the Academy, specifically for the Fisheries Department, we've done a lot of work over the years to help managers make better decisions on how to best manage the Delaware. A lot of people don't realize that there's folks here in various states, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York, and so forth, Delaware, that are on a daily basis trying to working to improve and best manage the Delaware. So sometimes we take part in work that's used to help with those decisions. We've done studies on more recently, like conservation of American eel. I think I just froze up there a little bit. But if we try to figure out the age of American eel, how many there are and where they are. Let me turn off my video for a second. We also, can everyone still hear me okay?
Yeah.
We also, with other species, we work to try and help conserve them. So we're interested in migratory fishes also like American eel, but shad and river herring. Endangered species that are starting to becoming less occurring in less areas than they did in the past. They're very rare, and so we do studies to try and help preserve and conserve them. And then lastly, I mentioned we've done a lot of work too in the Delaware to help people decide what fish are safe to eat and how many you can eat, in terms of what contaminants may be in the fish. So how many crabs can you eat, for example? Those are some of the things that we've done in recent years.
Great, thank you all. we can really see how so much of our work in the environmental field is related back to, this big river in our area, the Delaware. So it's really great that we can, celebrate the Delaware River during our festival this year, but also learn a little more about what all is going on on the sidelines to really protect and enhance the Delaware River. I know that some of you spoke to this in your introductions, but I want to go back to how students can really get involved in the environmental field right now. So if they have an interest in the environmental field, how can they get involved, whether it's with your organization or other organizations that you know? What are some ways that they can really start to see what the environmental field is all about?
Well, I can just answer quickly that we do have a program that we run in the summer, many programs, and one is called Schuylkill Acts and Impacts, and that is geared to incoming high school students 9 through 12. So if you're in middle school about to leave and you'd be interested, maybe we can put my email or the Waterworks information there, and I check back. And that's a great, really fun and great learning experience for getting immersed in the Schuylkill River watershed from the headwaters. We start all the way up where the river begins, all the way down to Philadelphia. It's pre-COVID, it was a week-long camping, experiential learning from experts, and also learning what actions you could take throughout the school year in working towards a better watershed, cleaner, better quality. So that's one thing.
I would say for me, my suggestion would be, my organization, we do have volunteer opportunities every now and then. I think it's unfortunately some of the opportunities depends on being able to bring people out safely to different environments. But certainly, whether it's my organization or Audubon or anyone else, there are a lot of organizations that just may not be as widely known. So I would say, just looking up environmental groups, organizations near you, visiting any nearby parks. There's usually flyers or some kind of information to look for. And above all else, whenever I want to learn more about something, one of the first things I do, at least these days, with the internet being so widely accessible, is just look it up. And even if it's not local, I'm sure someone has a video somewhere trying to explain, and you can get a good, at least initial taste or feel for what it is, and then maybe you can go from there. But there's a lot of resources. It's just a matter of being able to search for it.
Yeah, definitely mimicking what everyone else is saying. I think the way I found my first job was just Googling. I Googled water, aquatic science, volunteer, Philadelphia. And that's where I found Fairmont Waterworks, and I started volunteering there. And that's how I ended up getting my first job out of college. So yeah, I would say look for nearby environmental centers or green spaces, because they're always hosting different programs and looking for volunteers or interns. I know here at Discovery, we have the Alliance for Watershed Fellows that come in. Really great program. They host with, I believe, 23 environmental centers, and each get about 2 fellows. Our fellows that came in, one of their projects was creating QR codes to go around the center. So people with a phone who come in can scan the code and learn about a plant or about a bird or whatever. So yeah, really great program. Definitely recommend it. We also had some high school kids from Science Leadership Academy come in, and they learned, center assistance, taking care of the bird and the invasive removals around the center too. So yeah, volunteering, try it out. You may like it, you may not like it, but at least you know you tried it and you're aware of it now.
One thing I'll mention, I'm not quite 100% sure of the question because I had to jump off and come back on, but some areas that you can look in addition to volunteering in the fishery science field. The American Fishery Society is a great web page to just kind of keep an eye on. They have a program that targets high school age students, typically towards your junior year in high school, I think. It's called the Hutton program, Hutton. It's a great program to keep on your radar as you enter high school, and if you can think you're interested in this field. There's other programs in the area. I know the Academy has a long-running program called Women in Natural Sciences, WINS. That's one to look at as well. And then always reach out directly to any group that you're interested in and offer your free time. People will not turn down free labor. If you say that you'd love to come out and help out and explain where you're at in your career.
That's great. I want to reiterate the Watershed Alliance link is in the chat for anyone that's interested. So you can go there and check out their programs. We do have a question come in for David. Can the public get involved with any of those research projects you mentioned, such as citizen science projects?
We do at times have citizen science components to the work, not so much for the fisheries department. We have taken on volunteers, and it really depends on their capacity and where the volunteers are at in their career. So I think it's for middle school aged kids, high school aged kids. We typically don't have too many opportunities for those. I would say that as you if someone at the middle school in middle school is interested in this profession, I'd be happy to show you around the academy and talk about the work that I do, and have a little more in-depth experience for yourself. But I would say as you approach high school would be the age where, or when you're in high school is probably the age when there's more opportunities for you to kind of volunteer, be involved, and intern.
Go ahead, Ellen.
Just to piggyback off what you said, David, I get a lot of resources that come my way because we've written actually a middle grades curriculum that's in the Philadelphia schools right now. And so we're always learning about new apps and new ways to apply some of the learning. And I have learned recently about two different citizen science projects that if you're interested, one is called Literati, which is tracking litter in the streets. And that's I think it's an international program at this point. And so you can be part of that movement to eradicate litter and what it's doing to our environment. And another one I just learned about, but I don't know enough about, but I could find out, is about salt runoff. Another app where you can, it's again, a citizen science type of program where you can be part of a group movement to a collective action to learn about salt, track it, and eradicate salt runoff from the streets.
And I just want to add to one group that came to my mind. I think New Jersey might have the River Ambassadors program. That might be if I'm thinking right. They do a lot of citizen scientist monitoring, more focused on macroinvertebrates than fish, but that's a program that you could look into. And the Academy does take on volunteers. We rely on volunteers more definitely for our educational programming, And at times, those volunteers can also assist or work in various departments, depending on their age and depending on their age.
Can I plug in an opportunity too? We have a muscle program over here where people can come in once a month and measure the muscles in the reservoir. We actually just did it yesterday, and 4 volunteers came in. Woo, so that was great. So yeah, if you're interested in learning about water quality and how to take it, working with aquatic animals, maybe I can send you the link, Tressa, and you can share it out. But yeah, also a great community science opportunity.
That's great. Yeah, there's really so many different ways that young people can get involved in this field right in our area. We did have another question come in. So, our audience, you guys might be in middle school, but one question that we had is if you could have done something differently in high school to help with your career now, what would it be? Give you a second to ponder that and see if anything comes to mind.
I would say not that I would do it differently, but one of the most useful pieces of advice that was given to me by a teacher in middle school was if I was really interested in science, I would have to really focus on my reading. And at first I said, well, that doesn't make sense. Science is about numbers and, reading is more for English and history and things. And then as you start to continue down the road, you realize, well, I mean, reading is a skill for every kind of profession and interest, but in particular with science, there is a lot of reading that you need to do and a lot of different types of reading. So, there's all kinds of, whether it's a more of a story versus technical book, textbook, journal article. Reading is probably one of the most important skills, I think, that you could try and focus on. And, yeah.
I would say, one thing if I looked back on my time in high school is I would say I would tell myself, don't be dismissive of any particular subject in terms of thinking that you'll need it in the future. Remember my story, I thought I was going to go more into the physical therapy, medical side of things when I was a junior, senior in high school. And I ended up pivoting in college. So, don't be afraid to pivot. It worked for me. And I would encourage you not to be dismissive of any particular subjects and just try and do your best and continue to kind of narrow down, as you get older, what it is you want to do. But really have an open mind, especially being young. Have an open mind.
I would say if I were to change anything, pursue other activities definitely that are not particularly related to science, because you can be an artist within the science realm, or a communicator or a coordinator. Politics is a big thing as well. So yeah, it doesn't have to be full on, calculus 2 research, that high level statistics, all those things. There are other ways to approach science. And I will also mention to just start talking to your teachers more. Back in high school, I was very introverted. I had a couple of friends, that was it. But I feel like when you speak to your teachers about the things that you're interested in, then they can help point you to other opportunities. And I think that's also a great skill for once you get to college as well. Speaking to your professors will also help you find out opportunities that aren't usually, in the public, or maybe opportunities outside of the school or the college. So yeah, speaking to those teachers.
Priya, I want to just applaud everything you just said. I think that's so right on. And I would just add photography to that. You said art, and it's in the realm of, but I love to take pictures. And so the environmental field is so broad. And if you keep thinking broadly, you just touched on everything. That's great. Thank you.
Yes, and that really actually starts to go on a question that came in from our audience. Are there any skills or hobbies that you found helpful in your careers that you would have never thought would have been applicable to the jobs you have?
Yeah, I think for me, through high school and through college, I had a bunch of different jobs, whether it was working in restaurants or retail or, whatever the job was. It ended up helping me develop my own talking skills and people skills. And I think that's really useful. A lot of people probably don't realize how much they interact with certain, people in general. And so as much as, for my job, there's a technical aspect, much of it is simply being able to communicate efficiently and clearly with my colleagues, with partners, with people I don't know, trying to develop a relationship with them. And to Bria's point, sometimes it is kind of hard to just break the ice and ask a question. You might feel intimidated or unsure of yourself or unsure of what might happen, but you don't know until you try. And so, developing talking people skills is probably something that I appreciate a lot more now. And I didn't realize I was developing them, but I just kind of kept throwing myself out there and see what happened.
I don't know if this is really a skill, but working with social media is actually really helpful. We promote a lot of our things on Facebook, and we just created an Instagram account. So now we're just trying to tap into more communities. Before we had a mailing list, which was great, but we realized Facebook is a very broad platform, and still learning the ins and outs about that. But yeah, I feel like I started working with social media when I was a volunteer or an intern. So yeah, I feel like it's a slept on skill. We all need to use it, especially if you don't have a communications person. So yeah, that's the first thing that popped in my head.
I would just add, or it seems like it's a common theme. Communication in some sort is really important, whether you're communicating your work to others or you're trying to work more closely with colleagues. One of the skills I think I have, or I think I'm a pretty good communicator in terms of just kind of having some social intelligence when working with colleagues. So I think that's kind of it's just something to keep in mind. For me, being able to walk up to folks that I work with, interact with, and just kind of me naturally having that ability to say, hey, how's your day going? Have a cup of coffee, water cooler, chit chat. I tend to be a chatty person, and that helps just kind of keep the communication going, builds a rapport with the folks I work with. And so I can't really put my finger on exactly what that is, but that's a skill I think I have outside of my scientific training.
That's great. I wanted to touch on a little, the environmental field is really, always changing and always evolving. So I was curious if there's anything, that you all have seen in this field to indicate, how the future of environmental careers will look, and maybe what those careers would look like for, those who are in school right now.
I very optimistic for the environmental field and the broadening of it. And I can say I mentioned I've been in my job for 16 years, and the whole conversation about water and water quality has completely shifted in that time. And even people kind of understanding what I mean when I say watershed instead of glazing over when I say the word watershed and thinking it's a building. So I think that fortunately or unfortunately, the environment is like upon us, like it's so real to our everyday life. We're experiencing so many impacts from changes in the climate that there's more attention paid to green jobs and renewable resources. I think there's going to be a really wonderfully broad field open to all of young people going into careers.
This is such a great question. I can't, I'm thinking so many things are running through my head right now. Wow, it's a tough one. It's kind of tough. One thing I'll say is, with one thing I've always thought about is with all the innovation society has, every time we create something new, it's always a few years later or down the line that we see the repercussions of that, maybe environmentally. There's always new innovations. Right now, one of the concerns we have is a new contaminant, PFAS. It's just a type of contaminant that's in the water, but it came from an innovation of Teflon-coated pans. So we all got tired of our eggs and pancakes sticking to our pans, and someone invented Teflon along with some other products. And it's not until years later that we realize there's some repercussions of that environmentally. That seems to be a common pattern all throughout history for environmental science. We had it with PCBs back in the early 1900s, and it wasn't until the mid 1900s to 1960s that we started realizing the issues with PCBs. And then I just mentioned PFAS, and so it's hard to say. I think of the innovations we have today, and maybe it's something to do, with all the new batteries that we're going to be using for electric cars and the innovations we're making on that front. There might be repercussions of that 20 years from now, or that you guys will be working on and trying to solve those kinds of problems, whatever it may be. But I definitely agree with what Ellen said. There's definitely a need and a desire from society to have folks to solve these problems and help managers and policymakers make decisions on how best to conserve the environment.
Yeah, I would add to what David and Ellen mentioned, and just say that environmental science, the environmental field, whatever aspect you're interested in, there's always going to be something related that's always going to be relevant to everyone's daily life, whether they even realize it or not. Ellen mentioned that the Delaware is a source of drinking water. Not many people probably realize that, or if they do, they may not know the massive amount of infrastructure and effort and dedication just to maintain a basic utility. And as David mentioned, with new contaminants, new problems, one of the reasons why I got into science in the beginning was I really just wanted to understand a little bit better why things were the way they were. Why was I able to catch a fish today, but I didn't catch it yesterday? And so, science is a way of thinking. It's a way of, understanding the world around us and building upon that knowledge. And with every new innovation, there's going to be new problems, but also new solutions. And so I think it's kind of it's a delicate balance, but we need people to be interested in trying to advance everything we do in as environmentally respectful way as possible. So that's every day there's something new, and everything changes. So we need to be flexible, and we're always learning.
Yeah, those are some really great insight into our future. We are just about out of time. I just want to do a brief round robin of our panelists of just sharing one thing that's either your favorite part about your job or just something that you really love about your job. And I will start with Kurt.
Let's see. Like I just said, every day is different. There's always something new, and in particular with freshwater mussels, there's not as much research. And so one of the things that I like to tell people when they ask me a question is I don't know, and that's more true than it is not. With other research topics, fish, for example, we know a little bit more about fish. There's been a little bit more research on fish, but with some of these species, some of these different organisms, there's simply not that much that we know about. So when we're tackling a research project, it's new, and so we're learning, and so we're not, I wouldn't necessarily call myself an expert, but we try to learn every day, and there's always something new to humble yourself to try and learn more about.
I'll say that, I think if I was in my 20s and I answered this question, it would have been, I'd love to be in the field and field work and just being outside and working with fish. As I've gotten older, the interest is sort of that's still there. I still enjoy doing that when I get the opportunity, but the interest is sure shifted towards, solving problems for people or groups or whoever we work with. That's a really great feeling when you're able to solve a problem or give them an answer or steer them in a certain direction based on the work that you've done. That feels really good.
Well, I'll just say I love working towards the sustainability of the planet, and in the doing that, I really have a lot of hope when I work with young people, especially middle school and high school students, and connecting them to the scientists and the research and the information. But it works both ways, having them also think of new ideas and new ways to solve the problems is also very exciting for me. So it keeps me young and hopeful.
Thank you. Yes, and I want to thank all of our panelists for joining us today, Kurt, David, Ellen, and Bria. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to students today. And I want to thank all of our students for watching as well. I hope you enjoyed our program. And I invite you to check out some of the other things that are happening as part of the Delaware River Festival this year, both in person this weekend and all online this week. You can go to DelawareRiverFest.org to check those out. And thank you again for joining.